First contact. The Antarctic wind howled across the research station's reinforced walls as Dr. Sarah Chen peered through her microscope at what should have been an ordinary ice core sample. Instead, the crystalline structure before her defied every known law of physics. The crystals weren't just refracting light, they were producing it. "This can't be right," she muttered, adjusting the microscope's settings for the 100th time. The crystals pulsed with a faint blue glow that seemed to respond to her voice. Sarah had spent 6 years at the Palmer Research Station studying climate change through ice core analysis, but nothing in her extensive career had prepared her for this. The sample had come from an unusual depression in the ice sheet, one that her instruments insisted was hollow underneath. The station's radar equipment had been acting strange ever since they discovered it, showing impossible readings the other scientists had written off as equipment malfunction. But Sarah knew better. She'd seen the lights. 3 nights ago, while everyone else slept, she'd witnessed an aurora-like display concentrated directly above the depression. Unlike the normal southern lights, these had moved with purpose, as if searching for something. When she'd tried to show her colleagues the next morning, they'd found nothing but disturbed snow and that strange hollow space beneath. A sharp crack from outside jolted her from her thoughts. Sarah rushed to the window, her breath fogging the reinforced glass. Through the swirling snow, a new light pulsed, not from above this time, but from within the depression itself. Protocol dictated that she should alert the station chief. Protocol dictated a lot of things, none of which explained what Sarah found herself doing instead, pulling on her extreme weather gear and heading for the airlock. "Going to check the perimeter sensors," she announced into her radio, knowing the night shift would log it without question. It wasn't entirely a lie. There were sensors in that direction. The moment she stepped outside, the wind tried to knock her off her feet. Temperatures had dropped to -70 degrees Celsius, dangerous even with her specialized gear. The light pulsed again, stronger now, drawing her forward like a beacon. As she approached the depression, her instruments went haywire. Her tablet displayed impossible readings before shutting down completely. The snow beneath her boots had taken on a crystalline quality, crunching with an almost musical tone. The depression's edge dropped away sharply, revealing what had been hidden beneath the surface. Sarah's headlamp illuminated a sight that turned her scientific worldview upside down. A structure, clearly artificial, made of the same crystalline material she'd been studying. It hadn't been buried by snow, it had been growing through it. And it was damaged. Fractures ran through its otherwise perfect geometric surface, and from within, that pulsing light leaked out like a distress signal. As Sarah stood there, frozen between wonder and fear, a sound unlike anything she'd ever heard resonated through her bones, a crystalline harmonic that somehow conveyed pure terror. Something moved within the structure. Through one of the larger fractures, Sarah caught a glimpse of what she could only describe as living light. The entity within was vaguely humanoid in shape, but composed entirely of crystalline structures that shifted and flowed like liquid glass. It recoiled at the sight of her, its terror transmitted through another harmonic pulse that nearly brought Sarah to her knees. "It's okay," she found herself saying, though she knew the creature couldn't possibly understand. "I'm not going to hurt you." She raised her empty hands, a universal gesture of peace. The creature's crystalline form flickered, weakened. Through the fractures in its shelter, Sarah could see similar fractures running through its body. It was injured, dying perhaps, and terrified of the strange organic being that had discovered it. Sarah's scientific mind raced with questions, but her human compassion won out. Whatever this entity was, it needed help. She reached for her sample collection kit, removing a small crystal she'd found near the depression earlier that week. The creature's light pulsed with recognition. Slowly, Sarah placed the crystal on the snow between them. "See, I've been trying to understand, to help." The creature's terror didn't completely subside, but its light shifted from a panicked strobing to a more stable pulse. It reached out with what might have been an arm, drawing the crystal into its damaged shelter through some unseen force. Sarah watched in amazement as the crystal merged with the creature's form, immediately beginning to repair one of its smaller fractures. The harmonic tone it emitted changed, becoming less discordant. "You need more, don't you?" Sarah asked, already knowing the answer. "There are others like it in the lab. I can bring them." The creature's light pulsed once, and Sarah felt rather than heard what seemed like understanding. But as she turned to head back to the station, a new sound cut through the wind, the distinctive whir of helicopter rotors. Sarah's heart sank. The station's next supply run wasn't due for weeks, which meant someone else had noticed the anomalies. The creature's light dimmed in fear, and Sarah made a split-second decision that would change not only her life, but the course of human history. "I'm coming back," she promised, already formulating a plan, "and I'm going to keep you safe." As she rushed back toward the station, Sarah's mind whirled with implications. The helicopters meant government involvement, possibly military. They'd treat this remarkable being as a threat, a thing to be contained and studied. She couldn't let that happen. In her lab, Sarah quickly gathered the other crystal samples, her research notes, and essential supplies. The helicopters were getting closer. She had minutes at most before the station would be swarming with officials. Her radio crackled to life. "Dr. Chen, please report to the main lab immediately." Station Chief Williams's voice carried an unusual edge. "Copy that," she responded, buying time as she shoved the last of the crystals into her pack, just finishing up some readings. Sarah took a final look at her lab, 6 years of legitimate research about to be overshadowed by a discovery that would reshape humanity's understanding of life itself. The choice was clear. She could follow protocol, step aside, and watch as fear and military might dictated humanity's first contact with an alien intelligence, or she could trust her instincts and protect a being that had crossed the stars only to find itself injured and alone on her world. The helicopters were nearly overhead now. Sarah pulled her cold weather gear back on, mentally mapping the route to the depression that would keep her hidden from aerial view. She knew the terrain better than any pilots who'd just flown in. As she slipped out of the station's rear exit, Sarah thought about everything she was leaving behind. Her career, her reputation, possibly even her freedom. But when she remembered the creature's harmonic cry of terror and its response to her small act of kindness, she knew she was making the right choice. What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that this moment would later be remembered as the pivot point in human-alien relations. The night when humanity's first contact wasn't marked by military might or governmental authority, but by a single scientist's choice to extend compassion to a stranger from the stars. The wind rose to cover her tracks as Sarah Chen disappeared into the Antarctic night, carrying with her humanity's best hope for a peaceful first contact. Behind her, the helicopters landed at the research station, their searchlights sweeping the ice in ever-widening circles, but they were already too late. The real story was unfolding in the darkness beyond their lights, where a human scientist and a crystalline alien were about to learn that understanding bridges the greatest of distances, and that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't technology or military might, but simple human kindness. Breaking barriers. The abandoned mining shelter looked like any other forgotten human structure in the Antarctic wasteland, which was exactly why Sarah had chosen it. 3 days had passed since she'd fled the research station with her crystalline companion, who she'd started calling Echo due to its harmonic responses to sound. Inside, Sarah had transformed the small space into a makeshift laboratory using salvaged equipment and her own ingenuity. The walls were lined with reflective emergency blankets, creating a shimming cocoon that seemed to soothe Echo's light patterns. More importantly, they helped mask the alien's bioluminescence from any passing search aircraft. "Let's try this again," Sarah said, holding up a crystal sample. Echo's form rippled, extending what she now recognized as a sensory appendage. The crystal began to vibrate, producing a complex harmonic that Sarah recorded on her modified tablet. She discovered that Echo species communicated primarily through crystalline resonance. patterns of vibration that carried meaning through their crystalline bodies. What had initially seemed like simple responses to stimuli were actually attempts at communication. Echo's response was both beautiful and terrible. It created a crystalline display of the galaxies they'd visited, showing world after world where they'd found only microbial life or ruins of long-dead civilizations. They had never encountered a thriving, intelligent species like humanity. Their protocols assumed no such species existed. That's why this is so important, Sarah insisted. Echo is the first of its kind to actually interact with us, to understand that we're not just primitive organisms to be catalogued and dismissed. We have to find a way to communicate this to the rest of its species before their fleet arrives. James, who had been quietly analyzing Echo's structural changes, looked up suddenly. These adaptations you mentioned, Sarah, what if they're not just about survival? What if Echo's body is actually creating a new form of crystal that's compatible with both our worlds? The implications hit Sarah like a thunderbolt. She turned to Echo, who was already beginning to resonate at a frequency that made the very air shimmer. The crystalline being had understood James's insight before he'd even finished expressing it. A bridge between species, Maria breathed, watching as Echo demonstrated how its adapted crystals could interface with both their technology and its own crystalline systems. Not just communication, true understanding. Their breakthrough was interrupted by the distant sound of helicopters. The researchers had been followed, or perhaps their disappearance had finally been noticed. Either way, their time was running out. Sarah looked at her colleagues, seeing in their faces the same determination she felt. Will you help us? What we do next could determine the fate of both our species. Maria was already gathering research materials. James had pulled out his satellite phone, scrolling through contacts. I know some people, he said. Scientists who'll listen, who'll understand the importance of handling this the right way. Echo's light pulsed with what Sarah now recognized as hope. The crystalline being had learned that humans were capable of overcoming their fears, of choosing understanding over conflict. Now they just had to prove that truth to an entire invasion fleet. As they quickly packed essential equipment and prepared to move to a new location, Sarah reflected on how much had changed in just a few days. She had gone from being a lonely scientist studying ice cores to being part of something that would reshape humanity's understanding of life itself. The helicopters grew louder, but Sarah wasn't afraid anymore. She had started this journey trying to protect Echo from humanity, but now they were working together to protect Earth from Echo's own species. And somehow, through it all, they were forging a path towards something even greater. Proof that different forms of life, no matter how alien, could find common ground in the universal language of science and compassion. The coming storm. The underground facility buzzed with activity as scientists from around the world worked alongside military personnel, all united by an unprecedented crisis. 6 weeks had passed since Sarah, James, and Maria had gone public with their discovery, and humanity was racing against time. Through the reinforced windows of the command center, Sarah watched Echo floating in a specially designed chamber. The crystalline being's form had evolved dramatically, developing complex structures that merged Earth minerals with its original composition. More importantly, Echo had grown powerful enough to establish contact with its approaching fleet. They've passed Mars orbit, General Laura Hayes announced, her voice cutting through the constant hum of computers and urgent conversations. Multiple objects, exactly as Echo predicted. Time to arrival, 72 hours. Sarah studied the massive display screen showing the crystallite fleet's approach. The ships were beautiful and terrifying, massive crystalline structures that sparkled like diamonds against the void of space. Each one was larger than Earth's largest cities. Echoes ready for the transmission, Maria called from her station, where banks of specialized equipment stood ready to amplify Echo's crystalline communications to reach the approaching fleet. Sarah approached Echo's chamber, placing her hand against the transparent barrier. Over the past weeks, they developed a deep understanding, moving beyond simple communication to genuine friendship. Echo's light patterns shifted in response to her presence, forming what she now recognized as an expression of affection. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Echo had spent weeks preparing for this moment, modifying its structure to broadcast at unprecedented power levels. The risk of burning out its crystalline matrix was high. Echo's response came as a complex harmonic, but the facility's computers translated, "My people must understand. The cost of failure is too great." General Hayes joined them, her usual military bearing softened by concern. Despite initial skepticism, she had become one of their strongest allies after witnessing Echo's genuine desire to prevent conflict. "All planetary defense systems are on standby," she reported. "But if this works, we won't need them." She left unspoken what they all knew, that if it came to military conflict, Earth's weapons would be useless against the Crystallite fleet's advanced technology. Beginning transmission in 3 minutes, James announced from his station. He had developed the interface that would allow Echo to broadcast its experiences directly to the fleet, showing them the truth about Earth and its inhabitants. Sarah took her position at the main monitoring station, watching Echo's vital signs. The being's crystalline structure was already vibrating with gathered energy, preparing to push itself beyond its normal limits. Transmission commencing in 3, 2, 1. Echo's form blazed with light as it began broadcasting. The chamber filled with harmonics so complex they manifested as visible patterns in the air. Through their translation systems, Sarah could make out fragments of Echo's message. "My people, Earth is not what we believed. These humans, not primitive, they showed me kindness, helped me heal, understand each other. 2 forms of life, working together. Please listen." Echo's message continued, showing the fleet its memories of Sarah's rescue, the scientists' dedication to understanding its nature, humanity's willingness to look past fear toward cooperation. But more than just memories, Echo was transmitting the very essence of what it had learned about humanity, their creativity, their compassion, their unstoppable drive to understand the universe around them. Warning lights flashed as Echo's power output reached dangerous levels. "Core temperature critical," Maria reported, her voice tight with concern. "We need to stop the transmission." "No," Sarah countered, watching Echo's readings. "It's maintaining stability. Look at the harmonic patterns. It's adapted to channel the energy through its new Earth-based structures." Minutes stretched into hours as Echo continued broadcasting, pushing itself to reach every ship in the approaching fleet. The humans could only watch and wait, monitoring their instruments and hoping their message would be received. Suddenly, Echo's transmission caught a response. The main screen filled with crystalline patterns as the fleet began to reply. Sarah held her breath as the translation computers worked to decode the complex message. The first response came from a ship identifying itself as a science vessel. Impossible. A silicon-carbon symbiosis. The implications. Then another. These humans. They protected one of us. Studied with respect. And another. Echo's crystalline structure. It's evolved. Adapted. Growing in ways we never imagined possible. Hope began to rise in Sarah's chest as more responses poured in. The Crystallite's rigid worldview was cracking in the face of Echo's evidence. Their scientific curiosity, the same drive that had pushed them to explore the stars, was overcoming their preconceptions about organic life. But then a different signal cut through the others. The fleet commander's response boomed through their systems. "This changes nothing. Earth's core energy is vital to our survival. We cannot risk our species' future on unproven theories about organic intelligence." Echo's light dimmed momentarily before flaring brighter than ever. Its next transmission carried such power that the chamber's barriers creaked under the strain. "Commander, you speak of our species' survival while preparing to destroy another. I have learned that true advancement comes not from consuming resources, but from understanding that which is different from ourselves. These humans, they could help us find new ways to survive. Ways that don't require destruction." The chamber fell silent as Echo's words hung in the air. Sarah watched the fleet's response indicators, hardly daring to breathe. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment, whether an advanced species could overcome its prejudices and recognize the value of a different form of life. The science vessel responded first. The hybrid crystals Echo has developed. They show properties we've never seen before. Commander, there may be alternatives we haven't considered. More ships joined in, their messages overlapping. We should study this. A new approach. The humans' understanding of organic mineral interactions could be valuable. Finally, the fleet commander's signal returned, its tone markedly different. All ships, hold position at Mars orbit. We will investigate these claims before proceeding. The command center erupted in cheers, but Sarah's attention was fixed on Echo. The crystalline being's light had dimmed to a faint pulse, its structure showing signs of stress from the massive energy expenditure. Echo, she called out, pressing her hand against the chamber's barrier. Stay with us, please. The being's light flickered weakly, but its response carried clearly through their systems. Worth it, showed them the truth, about humanity, about hope. As medical teams rushed to stabilize Echo's deteriorating condition, Sarah realized they had won only the first battle. The real challenge lay ahead, proving to the crystallite fleet that humanity was worth more as allies than as an energy source. But as she watched humans and crystalline beings working together to save Echo's life, Sarah knew they had already proven the most important truth of all, that the universe's greatest resource wasn't energy or minerals, but the unlimited potential of different species working together in harmony. Humanity unites. The United Nations Assembly Hall had never seen anything like this. Representatives from every nation sat transfixed as a holographic display showed the crystallite fleet holding position near Mars. At the podium, Sarah Chen stood beside a partially recovered Echo, whose crystalline form now incorporated swirls of earth minerals that sparkled under the lights. The crystallites have given us 2 weeks, Sarah announced, her voice steady despite the enormous pressure. 2 weeks to prove that our species can work together, that we're worth more as allies than as an energy source. The assembly erupted in a chaos of voices. Echo's light pulsed softly, analyzing the human reactions. After its near burnout from the transmission, the being had developed an even deeper connection to Earth's minerals, leading to unprecedented breakthroughs in crystal organic integration. Dr. Chen, China's representative, stood. You're suggesting we share our scientific knowledge with beings who still consider harvesting our planet's core. No, Sarah corrected. I'm suggesting we show them something they've never seen before, different species working together to solve problems neither could solve alone. Echo moved forward, its form shifting to project a complex crystalline display above the assembly. The display showed what they discovered in the underground facility, how the merger of Earth minerals with crystallite technology created entirely new possibilities. Look at these energy patterns, Sarah explained as Echo's display shifted. When we combine human understanding of organic chemistry, crystallite crystal manipulation, we can achieve power generation efficiencies that neither of our species thought possible. The scientific advisors in the room leaned forward, their expressions changing from skepticism to interest as they processed the data. Echo's display showed how the hybrid crystals could harness solar energy with unprecedented efficiency, potentially solving both species' energy needs. But we need everyone's help, Sarah continued. Every nation, every scientific institution working together. The crystallites are watching to see if we can overcome our differences and collaborate on a global scale. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity faced its first true test as a united species. Their response would determine not just their fate, but their place in the galactic community. Japan's representative stood first. The Tsukuba Science City stands ready to assist. Others quickly followed, offering resources, facilities, and expertise. Within days, the greatest scientific collaboration in human history was underway. Research centers worldwide worked around the clock, sharing data and breakthroughs instantly. HFY served as a bridge, translating between human and crystallite scientific concepts. At the Atacama Desert facility, teams developed hybrid crystal arrays that could power entire cities using only sunlight. In Siberia, scientists worked with HFY to understand how crystallite technology could help humans survive in extreme environments. Indian laboratories made breakthroughs in crystal-based computing that transformed their understanding of both organic and silicon-based intelligence. But the crystallite fleet wasn't just watching their scientific progress. They were studying human culture, art, and most importantly, how humans resolved conflicts. Every international disagreement, every peaceful resolution became part of humanity's test. 1 week into their deadline, a crisis emerged. A rogue nation, fearing the loss of its fossil fuel-based economy, launched missiles at several research facilities. The world held its breath, waiting to see how humanity would respond. The response came not through military action, but through an unprecedented display of global cooperation. Neighboring countries offered immediate aid. Emergency protocols developed for the crystallite crisis swung into action. Within hours, the situation was contained through diplomacy and a show of united international resolve. HFY's transmission to the fleet that evening carried special weight. They faced internal division, yet chose unity. They had weapons, yet chose peace. These are not the actions of a primitive species. Sarah watched the fleet's response indicators, noting a subtle shift in their patterns. The crystallites were beginning to understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or resources, but their ability to work together despite their differences. In the underground facility, now serving as the central coordination point for global research, Sarah worked alongside scientists from former enemy nations. Language barriers fell away as they developed new ways to communicate complex ideas, often inspired by HFY's crystalline language. "Look at this," Dr. Yuki Tanaka called out, drawing everyone's attention to a screen. The Japanese quantum physicist had been working with HFY to understand how crystallite ships maintained coherence during faster-than-light travel. The data showed something remarkable. The hybrid crystals they developed weren't just more efficient at energy collection. They could potentially revolutionize space travel itself. By combining human insights into quantum mechanics with crystallite crystal manipulation, they had stumbled upon a new form of propulsion. "It's beautiful," Sarah breathed, watching as HFY confirmed their findings with its own analysis. "A perfect fusion of both our sciences." The discovery spread rapidly through the global research network. Labs worldwide began running simulations, each adding their own expertise to refine and expand the concept. Within hours, they had proof of concept for a technology that could benefit both species. As the 2-week deadline approached, HFY received an unexpected transmission from the fleet. The science vessel that had first supported them requested permission to enter Earth's atmosphere. It wanted to see humanity's progress firsthand. The arrival of the crystalline ship over the New Mexico desert was a moment that would be forever etched in human history. As its massive form descended, shimmering like a diamond in the sun, humanity held its collective breath. From the ship emerged a delegation of crystallites, their forms more angular and traditional than HFY's evolved structure. They moved with evident caution, their light patterns showing complex emotions as they encountered their first human welcoming committee. Sarah stood with HFY as the delegates approached. The contrast between the traditional crystallites and HFY's Earth-influenced form was striking. A living demonstration of how contact between their species had created something new and beautiful. "We have been watching." The lead delegate's harmonic message resonated. "Your species has shown us something we had forgotten in our long search for survival. That true advancement comes not from consuming resources, but from sharing them. From growing together." A new dawn. The next morning dawned with a sight unprecedented in human history. Crystalline structures growing alongside human architecture in major cities worldwide. The crystallite delegation had worked through the night, collaborating with Earth's scientists to establish what they called harmony points, places where their technology could interface with human infrastructure. Sarah stood atop the underground facility's observation deck, watching as a delicate crystal spire rose from the desert floor. Echo hovered beside her, its form now a perfect blend of alien geometry and Earth minerals. The being she had once found injured in the Antarctic ice had become a living symbol of cooperation between species. "They're already changing," Echo's harmonics conveyed, observing its fellow crystallites. "Their patterns show adaptation, like mine did. Earth's influence reaches deeper than they expected." The crystallite delegates had been stunned by the hybrid technologies humanity had developed in just 2 weeks. But what truly captured their attention was how these innovations had emerged from collaboration rather than competition. Inside the main laboratory, Dr. Maria Valdez was demonstrating their latest breakthrough to an attentive group of crystallites. The hybrid crystal matrix they developed didn't just generate power, it could store and process information in ways that merged organic and crystalline computing. "The applications go far beyond either of our current technologies," Maria explained as the crystals pulsed with complex data patterns. "This could revolutionize everything from medical imaging to space exploration." The lead crystallite delegate, who had introduced itself as Resonance, moved closer to examine the matrix. Its crystalline form vibrated with what Sarah now recognized as excitement. "In all our travels, Resonance harmonized, we never imagined finding a species that could help us evolve beyond our current limitations. We sought only energy, but you have shown us something far more valuable." The breakthrough came that afternoon. While reviewing data from the hybrid crystals, Sarah noticed something extraordinary. The new crystal structures weren't just combining their two technologies, they were creating something entirely new. "Look at these energy signatures," she called out, bringing up the data on the main display. "The crystals aren't just storing energy, they're amplifying it through some kind of quantum resonance with Earth's magnetic field." Echo's form pulsed with revelation. "The core energy we sought. We can access its pattern without harvesting it. The hybrid crystals are teaching us a new way." The implication hit everyone at once. The very thing that had brought the crystallites to Earth as potential destroyers could now unite them as allies. By working together, they had found a solution that served both species' needs without destroying either. News of the discovery spread rapidly through both human and crystallite communications networks. The fleet, still holding position near Mars, began showing energy patterns that the scientists had learned to recognize as joy. But it was what happened next that truly demonstrated how far both species had come. The crystallites, led by Resonance, made an unprecedented offer. They would share their spacefaring technology with humanity, helping them establish colonies throughout the solar system. In return, humans would help them establish ethical energy-gathering systems that wouldn't harm living worlds. "We have wandered the stars for millennia," Resonance explained to the hastily convened UN Assembly. "Always taking, never growing, you have shown us another way." The assembly chamber's walls now sparkled with hybrid crystals that translated every spoken word into crystalline harmonics and back, allowing perfect communication between species. It was a physical representation of how far they'd come from Sarah's first frightened encounter with Echo in the Antarctic ice. As the human representatives debated the offer, Echo moved to the center of the chamber. Its form had continued to evolve, now incorporating elements that reflected both its original nature and its Earth-changed self. "When I crashed on this world," Echo harmonized, its message clear in all languages, "I thought I had found only another resource to harvest. Instead, I found something far more precious, proof that different forms of life can not only coexist, but help each other grow beyond their limitations." The vote was unanimous. Humanity would join the crystallites in space, not as subordinates or conquerors, but as equals. Together, they would explore the galaxy, seeking not just resources but understanding. Sarah watched from the observation deck as the news spread across the globe. Crystal spires rose in city after city, each one a testament to what could be achieved when species worked together. The northern lights danced overhead, now joined by the shimmer of crystalline ships descending peacefully through the atmosphere. Echo joined her, its light patterns showing contentment. You were the first, it harmonized softly. The first human to show kindness to something alien and frightening. You changed everything. Sarah smiled, remembering that cold Antarctic night that seemed so long ago now. We changed everything, she corrected, by choosing to trust each other when we had every reason not to. As they watched the crystalline ships descend like falling stars, Sarah realized they were witnessing more than just first contact or a technological revolution. They were seeing the birth of something entirely new, a future where different forms of life could come together and create wonders neither could achieve alone. The human element, it turned out, wasn't just about survival or technological advancement. It was about the capacity to reach across the vastness of space and difference itself, to find common ground in the most unlikely places, and to turn potential enemies into allies through understanding and compassion. Legacy. 5 years later, Sarah stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, Earth's first joint human crystallite space installation orbiting high above the blue marble of her home world. The station itself was a marvel of hybrid engineering. Living crystal merged seamlessly with human technology, creating an environment where both species could thrive. Echo, now serving as the chief liaison between humans and crystallites, floated beside her. Its form had continued to evolve, becoming ever more complex as it incorporated new elements from their shared discoveries. The being that had once hidden in terror from humans now moved confidently between both societies, helping bridge gaps in understanding. The first colony ships are ready, Echo harmonized, its patterns reflecting excitement. The massive vessels in the construction dock below were unlike anything either species had created before. Built using hybrid crystal technology, they could sustain both organic and crystalline life on long-term deep space missions. Mars Colony 1. Sarah read the name emblazoned on the nearest ship's hull, written in both human script and crystalline patterns. I never imagined we'd come so far so quickly. The past 5 years had transformed both species in ways none had predicted. The crystallites had learned to appreciate the complexity and beauty of organic life, while humans had gained new perspectives on consciousness and existence itself. Together, they had solved problems that had plagued both species for generations. The hybrid crystal technology they'd pioneered had revolutionized life on Earth. Clean energy was now abundant, with crystal arrays powering cities while actually helping to stabilize the planet's magnetic field. Crystal organic computers processed data in ways that merged the best of both species' approaches to problem solving. But more important than the technological advances were the cultural ones. The presence of the crystallites had united humanity in ways no human movement ever had. National borders held less meaning when your neighbors included beings from across the galaxy. The old divisions of race, religion, and ideology began to fade in the face of a broader understanding of life itself. Ambassador Chen, a young voice called. Sarah turned to see Maya Rodriguez, one of the first graduates of the new Xenocience Academy. Like many of her generation, Maya had grown up seeing the crystallites not as aliens, but as partners in humanity's greatest adventure. "The council is ready for your presentation," Maya said, her excitement barely contained. Today marked the presentation of the Harmony Protocol, a framework for peaceful first contact with other species, developed jointly by humans and crystallites based on their own experience. As they made their way to the council chamber, Sarah passed dozens of examples of how their species had grown together. Human children played in zero gravity alongside young crystallites, their laughter harmonizing with crystalline chiming. Scientists of both species worked side by side, their different approaches to problems creating solutions neither would have found alone. The council chamber itself was a perfect symbol of their cooperation. The circular room featured alternating sections adapted for human and crystallite comfort, yet designed so neither species felt separated from the other. The walls pulsed with hybrid crystals that facilitated perfect translation and understanding. Sarah took her place at the center of the chamber, Echo beside her. Around them sat representatives of both species, human diplomats alongside crystallite elders, all equal in voice and status. 5 years ago, Sarah began, we stood on the brink of conflict. Two species, each seeing the other as a potential threat. Today, we stand together as proof that difference doesn't have to lead to destruction. Echo's form shifted, projecting images of their shared journey, from that first frightened encounter in Antarctica to the current golden age of cooperation. The chamber filled with harmonics as the crystallites responded emotionally to the memories, their vibrations merging with the murmurs of their human counterparts. The Harmony Protocol, Sarah continued, isn't just about preventing conflict. It's about recognizing that every species, no matter how different they may seem, has something valuable to teach us. It's about approaching the unknown with curiosity rather than fear. As if to underscore her words, a signal chimed through the station's communications system. The Deep Space Array had detected something, patterns that matched neither human nor crystallite signatures. Something new was out there, waiting to be discovered. The chamber erupted in excited discussion as the data was analyzed. Both species, once so wary of the unknown, now faced the prospect of new contact with anticipation rather than fear. They had learned, through their own experience, that difference could be a source of strength rather than conflict. "We're ready for this," Echo harmonized, its confidence resonating through the chamber. "Together, we can face whatever lies ahead." Sarah looked around the chamber, seeing hope and determination on both human and crystalline faces. They had come so far from that cold Antarctic night when she had made the choice to trust rather than fear. That simple act of compassion had sparked a revolution not just in technology or diplomacy, but in how species could relate to one another. As the council began discussing plans to investigate the new signal, Sarah reflected on the true legacy of their journey. It wasn't the hybrid technology, the space stations, or even the colonies they were building. It was the proof that different forms of life could not only coexist, but help each other grow beyond their limitations. The human element, it turned out, wasn't unique to humanity. It was something universal, the capacity to reach across the gulf of difference and find common ground, to turn fear into understanding, strangers into allies, and potential enemies into family. As the station orbited Earth, its hybrid crystal surfaces reflecting both sunlight and starlight, Sarah knew they had created something precious, a blueprint for how life, in all its infinite variety, could come together and build something greater than the sum of its parts. The adventure wasn't ending. In many ways, it was just beginning. But now they faced it together, two species united by understanding, ready to share their story with whatever new forms of life awaited them among the stars.